Show. Robin Slim Show.
Hey guys, it's Isaac Thorne.
Isaac, how are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you? Awesome show tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we've been good, man. And I want to thank you. I know your story is a long one, but I want to thank you so much for your involvement, for your
Yeah.
promotion of us. Like, you're amazing, dude.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to do it. I love the show, and tonight's just been amazing.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed with the lineup.
Thank you. It's flying, too. Like, that's always
Yeah.
how I know it's a good show, when it's like, wow, we got to wrap it up. And, like, we still have a page of questions we never got to.
This is like the third show in a row too that's just flown by. Like the past three have just been crazy.
Nice.
Thank you, man. Do you have any new books coming out?
Well, the one I read last time, back in June, Dig 'em,
Dig 'em.
was just released, or actually released at the beginning of the month, in both audio, recently released in audio form, and released as an ebook at the beginning of the month. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that book
Yeah.
was great. That story, the read was great. Our
Thank
live guest from that show wanted to get here for your interview, and he got here a little late, and he was upset that he hadn't gotten a sit-in for your interview.
Oh, oh,
That's-
that was Joey, right?
Yes, Joey Taylor.
Yeah.
Yes, dude. He was really excited to talk to you.
And he's awesome too. I saw your second show with him on it, and his music is just nuts.
He is, dude. He's great. But without any further ado, I did want to get to your story, and what is the title of it?
The title of it is Decision Paralysis, and it's been really abridged. So we'll see how it goes. If it starts to run on too long, I'll find a good stopping point. But I'd hope to get to the end because I think it's creepier with the in its entirety there.
Awesome.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
So what I'm gonna do, Isaac, when you're ready, I'm gonna mute the mics, so it's gonna be
Okay.
very silent and everything. All right.
All right, awesome. All right, I'm ready.
All right, muting the mics now.
The scariest day of Tina's life was the day that her granny's mind broke, the day that her granny made her last decision. The older woman had driven to Tina's school that day to pick her up. Tina could have ridden the bus, of course. They had tried that once. Her mother and father were worried about her granny's health. Just keeping up with Tina for the few hours after school was enough of a chore for a widow in her twilight. That's what they said, anyway. Tina knew her granny had argued with them about it. Despite her granny's protests, Tina's mother and father won that argument. They wanted Tina to start riding the bus. Their feet were down. That's how her granny put it, anyway. She said that her mother and father had put their feet down and nailed their shoes to the floor, and that meant they weren't going to budge. Tina had imagined her parents bent at the knees, driving long nails into the toes of their shoes with hammers like the ones that still hung on the wall out in Graham's old tool shed. She peeked in that shed every now and then, even though she knew her granny didn't want her going in there. That was a private place, she had explained, a place of final decisions, a place for the dead. Tina never understood what her granny meant by that. She never saw any dead people in there, just a bunch of old tools hanging on the wall and a dead, dried-up earthworm or two. Her granny was waiting at the end of her driveway for the bus to arrive on that day after she had had the fight with her mother and father, but no one had told the bus driver that Tina was riding it. He just kept on driving right past her granny's house. Tina had pressed the palms of her hand against the back window of the bus as it carried her by. She had screamed for her granny as the old woman gave chase as fast as she could. The other kids might have been laughing while she screamed. Tina couldn't remember for sure. She was too terrified that the bus would just keep on rolling forever, and she would never see her granny, her mother, or her father again. Beyond the bus window, her granny flailed her arms in the air as she ran. Tina could see that she was shouting for the bus driver to stop and to let Tina off. For a moment, it looked like the bus driver wasn't going to heed her pleas. Perhaps Tina would be forced to continue riding the bus until it slammed right into the edge of the earth somewhere down the line. Then, mercifully, she felt the massive contraption stopping beneath her. That was followed by the startled soda can pop-top hiss of its door swinging open. Tina broke away from the rear window and dashed down the aisle toward the open door, launching her backpack over one shoulder. She leaped into her granny's open arms just outside. Never again, her granny had said. I'll pick you up from school from now on. I've decided. Tina felt her granny lay her cheek against the top of her head. Never again. I've decided. Her granny was never quite the same after that. She always looked distracted, as if she'd forgotten something she was supposed to do. There are just so many decisions you have to make when you're a grown-up, her granny had explained to her one afternoon. There are so many responsibilities. It's overwhelming, especially when you have phones ringing and devices dinging at you and people harassing you about this and that. Makes me wish Jessie were still alive to help me take care of all this. The day of her granny's final decision had been one of the worst. She had said so as Tina climbed into the grandfather in my dreams last night, she told Tina. He was sitting on a little stool right there in the door of that old tool shed. Standing wide open, that door was, with all those dead man's rusty old tools hanging on hooks just inside of it. He was sitting there just like he did in life sometimes, pulling a drag on a cigarette and squinting at me through that old blue smoke when it hit him in the eye. Then he raised both his hands up and looked around like he was gesturing at all the stuff locked up in that old shed. Then he spoke to me. He said, "What are you doing, hanging on to all this old stuff? Who are you keeping it for? Don't you see that all you're doing is making more work and upkeep for yourself? All you have to do is let go of some of it. Then you don't have to make so many decisions." I tried to tell him that I couldn't let it go, that the tool shed was all I had left of him. I wanted to explain that I can't just stop taking care of things. My mouth was hanging open to say all that, but the words just wouldn't come out. It was like my tongue was paralyzed. Jesse just sat there and looked at me for another minute. Then you know what he said? He waved that cigarette in the air so the smoke made a little squiggle in front of him, and he recited some lines from that old folk song about the worms. The one about being dead and going to rot. How did it go? The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose, they eat the jelly between your toes. I sat up in bed, wide awake, right then. I crawled out of bed and stood there in my nightgown, looking out the window at that old tool shed of his. The full moon was shining right on the door, bright enough to cast shadows, and there it sat, that old tool shed, just as it had been for a long time now, all closed up and silent as the grave. That sounds like an awful dream, Tina said. I didn't get back to sleep all night, her granny said. All I could think about was how the worms are eating at your grandfather, and I can't stop them. There's nothing I can do to stop them. She fell silent. The horns of two cars blared long in protest as the Lincoln rolled full speed and without pause through a four-way stop. The street sign at the intersection indicated that they were on Wormwood Street. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout. Then there was the neighbor kid, her granny spat. Tina started in her seat. He shows up at my door right as I'm about to leave for the grocery. Wants to mow my lawn for a couple of 20s. But then he starts asking me all these questions. Do I prefer it cut high or scalped? Do I want him to avoid any specific areas where there might be flower beds or bushes he can't see? Do I want him to run the trimmer when he's done with the mowing? I'd swear he asked me what to do about the worms, too. I don't know what worms he was talking about, but I heard him say something about worms. That got me thinking about your poor old Gram again, and I could feel the tears starting to well up. Finally, I just threw the money at him, clapped my hands over my ears, and hightailed it to the car. Let him do whatever he thinks needs to be done. I have my own decisions to make. I can't make everybody else's decisions for them. That was when Tina heard and felt the loud thud on the right. She glanced behind them to see a man in a cycling outfit and helmet laying prone on the shoulder of the road. One of his legs was twisted backward at the knee, causing the toe of his shoe to point skyward. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose, they eat the jelly between your toes. A ruby pool of blood expanded along the pavement from beneath what was left of the man's face. Silently, Tina began to cry. Oh, and then there was the grocery, her granny shouted. The grocery. First, you have to find a parking space that's not somewhere out in the middle of town so you don't have a heart attack walking up to the door. Next, you have to fight your way past the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Little League teams, the Salvation Army, the Pink Ribbon Crusade, or whoever is standing out front. And if they don't nag you on the way into the store, they nag you on the way out. Most times, both. So, you finally make your way past all that hullabaloo, only to find yourself stuck pushing your cart behind the same slow-ass nitpicker in every single aisle. They're always standing right where you need to be, too. They have to read the entire label and try to sound out the ingredients. Does anybody outside of someone who wears a lab coat for work know how to pronounce fucking gibberish like phenylephrine? Tina sobbed audibly from the back seat. She had never heard her granny use the swears before. So you have to make another decision then, her granny said. You have to decide whether you're going to go around them and try to remember to come back for what you need, or just wait them out and hope that wherever they're headed next is the hell away from you. God, makes me so mad. The left side of the car suddenly felt as if it had leaped off the ground. To their left, one of those big blue standalone United States Post Office mailboxes went flying and took the Lincoln's side mirror along with it. The mirror bounced off the back seat window on the edge of the car opposite Tina, leaving a long black skid mark on the glass in its wake. Tina glanced through the rear windshield and saw people watching after them, many standing at edges of yards or on the opposite sidewalk, their mouths hanging open in disbelief. One young man had apparently been struck by something as her granny drove past. He was seated on the sidewalk directly behind them, rocking back and forth on his bottom and cradling his right shoulder with his left hand. A woman who had appeared to have been pushing a baby stroller was now chasing it down the hill behind them. Of course, then you have to battle the lines at the checkout, and no sooner do you pick a lane than someone else jumps ahead of you. Then you spend 15 minutes waiting for the cashier to figure out how to get into the system while the line stacks up behind you, so there's no escape. Sometimes I think those kids at the grocery just want to jam everybody together like segments of some weird human worm, like they think that it's funny. A big green worm with rolling eyes crawls in your stomach and out your sides. And the worms, her granny shouted. There are worms all over the sidewalk when you come out of the store after a rain. Where do they come from? Then there's all the choices you have to make just to get out of the parking lot and find your way back home, she screeched. You better believe as soon as you put your car in reverse that the asshole behind you or beside you or behind you will decide to back out at the same time. And what happens when you finally get to the end of the aisle? Can you guess? All of a sudden, 1,000 people want to cross the parking lot to the door so you can't get through. You have to keep watching and decide when it's safe. Decide when you're least likely to run over somebody. Damn it! I'm tired of deciding. So you know what I did? Tina saw her granny glance up in the rearview mirror at her for the first time that afternoon. Her eyes were full of jagged streaks of red lightning and hate. I just gave up trying to make decisions. I just gave up and hit the gas. I hit the gas and I plowed right through that entire crowd of motherfuckers. Oh, you should have heard those people scream. And I screamed back at them. I rolled down my window and I screamed at them, "You're driving me to an early grave." That's what I screamed. And maybe that's for the best. The earlier I get there, the earlier I can stop the worms from feasting on your grandfather. That's when I came to get you, Tina. I came to pick you up from school because I promised I would do that. But that was my last decision. Something broke inside me. I can't make any more decisions now. I'm all out of them. I mean, look at me. I can't even move. I no longer have a choice. Tina felt sick. That day's lunch exploded from behind her throat and out her mouth, into her lap and the Lincoln's floorboard beyond it. She could hear her granny's maniac laughter from the front seat. Your stomach turns a slimy green, and pus pours out like whipping cream. In the back seat, Tina sat up straight and peered through the windshield at the oncoming stone masonry of the town's biggest cemetery. The wall would probably kill them both on impact. It might as well be the edge of the earth, and the Lincoln might as well be that old school bus she'd been afraid was going to go right off the end. Furiously, she fought against her seatbelt, pressing the release button and yanking on the strap 3 times before the tab finally came loose from the slot. She threw the strap aside and reached for the lever to open the Lincoln's door. She didn't know for certain whether what she was doing might save her life, but she was more than certain that hitting the cemetery wall would kill them both. She wrapped her fingers around the door lever and pulled. Nothing happened. The door remained closed. "Granny!" Tina screamed. "Granny, please unlock the door and let me out. I don't want to go with you and Graham. I want to go home." From the front seat, "You'll spread it on a slice of bread, and that's what you eat when you are dead." Desperate, Tina snatched her school backpack off the seat beside her and dove into the floorboard behind the passenger seat. There was just enough space for her to crouch there, fetal, with her backpack and its contents filling the gap between her and the seat in front of her. She imagined the front end of her granny's Lincoln collapsing into the cemetery wall. Silently, she prayed that there was enough length on the front of the car to protect her in the back. Awareness came about after some struggle. Her knees hurt, her shoulders and her back ached too. She tried to open her eyes, but there was a bright light in front of her that made them sting, so she closed them tight again. She drew in a deep breath, which set her ribs on fire, and let it out in a series of short gasps and coughs. She felt the warmth of the palm of someone's hand on her brow. "There, there," a familiar voice whispered. It sounded a little like Granny, but without much of the hoarseness that comes with old age. "There, there. Everything's all right. Everything's going to be all right." Tina opened her mouth to speak, but her lips were met instead by the mouth of a plastic straw. "Sip," said the voice. Her tongue felt thick and her throat was scratchy. Swallowing was painful, but the cool water felt good as it rolled down her esophagus. "Granny," she managed. "No, sweetie," the voice whispered. "It's Mommy. Mommy's here." "Mommy?" Tina replied. "Mommy, the light's too bright." There was a metallic squeak, and suddenly the blinding haze in front of her eyelids was gone. She opened her eyes and, when her vision cleared, was able to make out the forms of both her mother and her father standing over her. She knew that she must be laying down because behind them was a white ceiling with a lot of little holes in it, like the one in her classroom at school. "Where?" "You're in the hospital, Pumpkin," her father said. "You were in a nasty accident, but the doctors think you're going to heal up just fine." "Accident? Granny?" Now, her mommy said. "Don't you worry about that right now. You just lay back and get some rest. Let your body heal. Everything else in the world can wait, okay?" "Okay," Tina replied. Her eyelids suddenly felt heavy again. "Mommy and Daddy are going to go talk to the doctor for a minute, sweetie," her mother said. "You'll be okay here. Just relax. We'll be right back." There was the sound of multiple footsteps on linoleum, then what was most likely a closing door, and the room was quiet. Tina was overcome by the need to sleep. "Granny?" she whispered into the darkness. "Where are you, Granny? What did you do?" "I made one more decision after all," she thought she heard a voice say from a distance. "I'm with your Graham now, Tina. I decided to be with him." "But you didn't let me have a choice," Tina whispered in reply. "I didn't get a choice." There was a long pause. Tina was nearly unconscious when the voice spoke again. "It's strange here," it said. "Just like the old song says. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. You can't stop them. No matter what you decide to do, what choices you make, you can't stop the worms." Tina drifted into a deep sleep, glad of the fact that she did not need to make any more decisions that day. The end.
Wow.
That's like an episode of like the Twilight Zone.
That was
Like,
amazing. Wow.
Thank you very much.
crazy.
Thank you, Isaac. That's great, dude. How long did it take you to write that?
That one, it was one of those that you get the idea for and you just start typing and it kind of writes itself, you know?
Yeah.
Some of them aren't like that, but that one definitely was. It's a time in our lives when there are so many things just hitting us, and we're making more decisions now in a few seconds than people 100 years ago did in an hour.
Right.
And I just happen to think, what if somebody was just so overwhelmed by that they decided to just give up, and that they just can't make any more decisions. And it just so happened that it was exactly the wrong place and time to do that.
Nice. That's awesome. What is that called again, Isaac?
Decision paralysis.
Writing that down. That was amazing.
Yeah,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you said that was the abridged version.
Yes. Yeah, a lot more shit happens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Nice. That is cool, dude.
Thank you very much.
No problem. And thank you as well. I know I said it before, but I did see too your blog.
Yes.
that you wrote about us. That was really, really awesome.
Oh, no problem at all. No problem. Like I said, I love the show, and I can't believe I'm on the same show with Bleeding Critic and a story about skeleton rape.
I can't believe skeleton rape is on the same show as Bleeding Critic.
And you, exactly. It's all terrifying. It's all terrifying in its own way.
You know what? Not only that, but you guys managed to get Bleeding Critic to read a story that he wrote for you guys that contained the word anus, which is just impressive in itself.
That rocks, dude. Yeah, dude, he literally, like, we were talking before the show, and he's like, I just finished writing the story. It was maybe like an hour or two. I was so excited. I'm like, that is so cool.
That's awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Thanks again. I can't say it enough, man. You're awesome, Isaac.
I appreciate that. And if I've got a second here, I just want to say that I've already cast my vote in this election, and I voted for Slambo because I think it's about time we had a president with a beard. We haven't had one in my lifetime.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that. I'm writing him in. I don't even think he's writing himself in, but I'm writing him in. I don't care, baby. I'm going. Who was that guy? I don't even remember. You trounced
What,
him.
next week?
Oh,
Jim,
last week.
Jim Hedges.
Hedges.
Yeah,
Oh,
Hedges.
my God. Was he a doddering old bag of shit or
Yeah,
what?
he definitely was.
I didn't even know there was a prohibition party. I
Yeah,
heard
me
that from you.
neither.
Dude, because it works so well when they try to last. Like,
Yeah.
And I re-listened to a little bit of that interview too, and it was like it was really weird because like he would just Slambo would say the most ridiculous things, and then Jim would just act like nothing happened.
He just kept pushing right on through.
he
Absolutely.
did.
He's just plowing.
Oh, man.
I also want to give a couple of shout outs while I'm here. We talked a little bit about Leanne Moonraven and Carmen Theater the last time I was on, and I now have a small part in her latest season of The Burbs as the creepy neighbor Frank Stevens. So I'm doing a little bit of audio acting here.
Cool.
And
Nice.
there's a indie film production company called My Little Rascal Productions, and you can find them on Twitter at My Little Rascal 1, who have decided to adapt some of my stories for film. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool, dude.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I see these characters in my head. I can't wait to see them on the screen, you know?
That's cool. Yeah, as long as it's not a Michael Nemeth production. Do
yeah,
not
no.
go with that guy.
I did as much background checking as I could, as you can on social media.
Isaac, where can people find your work?
People can find my work on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, places like that, Audible now.
I was
two
gonna
of my
say,
stories
cool.
are up there.
I was going to
Yeah,
ask
and-
Joe, too, if any of you guys had Audible stuff.
And both of them are narrated by me.
Cool.
One of them with an accent and the other with my normal voice, which probably also has an accent, but not the same accent. And you can find me on Twitter at Isaac R. Thorne, and that's Thorne with an E. Same on Facebook, and IsaacThorne.com.
Awesome,
Awesome,
man.
dude.
That's cool that you read your own work too.
Yes! I
You're
like
great.
that.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you very much.
That's awesome. But you know, it's funny. I was just hit me when we're talking about like the Audible and stuff. I was showing Slambo the other day that I don't know if you guys are familiar with Philip K. Dick.
Yeah.
But I listened to an audio version of A Scanner Darkly, and it's narrated by Paul Giamatti, and it's just the most amazing thing.
Oh, wow, I bet it is.
Yeah, it's really great.
I want to hear that done by, who's Stephen Brule? The actor that plays John C. Reilly.
Yeah.
But
Dr.
as, I want to hear him as Steve Brule, though.
John C. Riley.
Oh, that's great. I haven't watched that show in a while. It came on Adult Swim last night, and I don't know where this episode in the timeline of the show was. It was, I guess, later. Like, he got into a television studio and had this producer cursing and yelling at him the whole time, and then they had a guest come on, and it came to be that this guy was planning, I guess, for the apocalypse, and he was just on there to sell his like fallout shelters and soups, but it was all like horse meat and stuff. It was hilarious. I caught it like a night or two ago. That show was crazy.
Nice. Well, that show, it's hard to figure out where the timeline is in that show, because I think there's something like 5 years between seasons.
Oh, that's great. Isaac, thanks again, bro. You are
Thank
awesome, dude.
I appreciate it. And have a great rest of the show. It's been fantastic so far.
Thank you
Awesome,
so
thank
much,
you.
dude.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Isaac.
Take care, Isaac.
That's great. And we will be